The massive crystal throne felt colder than usual as King Zephyros sat alone in his royal chamber. Outside the tall windows, his once bright city was slowly going dark. One by one, the beautiful light towers that had glowed for thousands of years were shutting down forever. The sight made his chest tight with worry. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to his people. Not to his kingdom. Zephyros had ruled the Valerian Empire for over 300 years. His people lived on 12 different planets across the galaxy, and they were known for being smart, peaceful, and powerful. Their technology was so advanced that other species looked up to them. But now, everything was falling apart. The problem started in their planet's core. Deep underground, massive machines had been creating energy for their entire civilization. These weren't just any machines. They were connected to special crystals that had been working perfectly for thousands of years. But something had gone wrong. The crystals were dying, and nobody knew how to fix them. At first, only a few outer cities lost power. The royal scientists said they would solve it quickly. Zephyros believed them. He had always trusted his advisors, and they had never failed him before. But weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. More cities went dark. People started leaving their homes, trying to find places that still had light and warmth. The king tried everything. He sent his best minds to study the problem. He offered huge rewards for anyone who could find a solution. He even asked for help from other alien species they had been friends with for centuries. Nothing worked. The crystals kept dying, and with them, his people's hope was dying too. Then came the humans. Nobody had expected them to be a problem. Humans were new to space travel, just babies compared to the ancient Valerian civilization. They lived on one small planet and had only recently figured out how to travel between stars. Most Valerians barely paid attention to them, but humans were different from other species they had met. They expanded fast, really fast. Within just 50 years, they had built colonies on dozens of planets. They seemed to need more space constantly, always looking for new worlds to settle on. The trouble started when human ships began entering Valerian space. At first, it was just exploration. The humans said they were peaceful and just wanted to learn. Zephyros was willing to share some of their territory. Space was big enough for everyone, right? Wrong. The humans didn't just want to visit. They wanted to stay. They built mining stations on asteroids that belonged to the Valerians. They started colonies on moons that had been Valerian territory for thousands of years. When Valerian officials asked them to leave, the humans said they had just as much right to be there as anyone else. Zephyros tried diplomacy first. He sent ambassadors to meet with human leaders. He offered to share some planets in exchange for others. He even suggested working together to explore new parts of the galaxy, but every agreement fell apart. Humans kept expanding into Valerian space, and soon both sides were angry. The first battle happened by accident. A human mining ship ignored warnings to leave a Valerian asteroid field. A Valerian patrol ship fired warning shots. The humans thought they were being attacked and fired back. Within hours, both sides had called for backup, and what started as a misunderstanding became a full battle. That was 15 years ago. Now the war had consumed everything. Zephyros had been forced to send millions of his people to fight. Beautiful Valerian cities had been turned into military bases. Ancient temples became weapons factories. The peaceful empire he had inherited had become something he barely recognized. The worst part was sending his daughter away. Commander Lyra was his only child, and she was everything he could have hoped for in an heir. She was brave, smart, and deeply loved by their people. She had volunteered to lead their most elite squadron against the humans, saying it was her duty as future queen. Zephyros was proud of her courage, but every day she was gone felt like torture. He hadn't heard from her in 6 months. The last message said her squadron was going deep into human territory for a special mission. Since then, nothing. No reports, no signals, no word about whether she was alive or dead. The not knowing was almost worse than bad news would have been. Tonight felt different, though. Heavier somehow. Zephyros had spent the day in meetings with his remaining advisors, and the news was all bad. 3 more cities had lost power completely. The evacuation of their outer colonies had failed. Again, they simply didn't have enough ships to move everyone. Food supplies were running low because their farming planets needed the crystal energy to grow crops. His advisors had suggested something that made his stomach turn. Surrender. The word felt like poison in his mind. No Valerian king had ever surrendered to anyone. Their empire had stood strong for over 10,000 years. They had survived natural disasters, alien invasions, and internal conflicts. But they had never faced anything like this. A war they couldn't win while their own planet was dying beneath their feet. Maybe, his oldest advisor had whispered during the meeting, it's time to consider peace talks with the humans. Better to negotiate from some position of strength than to wait until we have nothing left. Zephyros had dismissed everyone after that comment, but the words stayed with him. Was surrender really the only option left? Could he really be the king who ended their proud civilization's independence? He stood up from his throne and walked to the great balcony that overlooked his capital city. Below him, the streets that used to buzz with activity day and night were mostly empty. The few people he could see moved quickly, hurrying between the buildings that still had power. In the distance, he could see the glow from the last working crystal towers, but even those seemed dimmer than they had been yesterday. Zephyros pulled out a small communication device and stared at it for a long time. He had been thinking about recording a message to Lyra just in case she was still alive somewhere and could receive it. But what would he say? That he was about to surrender their empire to the very enemies she was fighting? That all her sacrifice might have been for nothing? Instead, he just held the device and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, if she was still alive, his daughter was probably looking at the same stars. He wondered if she felt as hopeless as he did right now. He wondered if she knew how much he missed her voice, her laugh, her unwavering belief that everything would work out somehow. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the night sky, though he wasn't sure if he was apologizing to Lyra, to his people, or to all the kings who had come before him. "I don't know what else to do." The stars didn't answer, but they kept shining anyway, just like they had for billions of years before Valerians ever existed. Maybe, Zephyros thought, that was supposed to be comforting. But tonight, it just made him feel very small and very alone. Commander Lyra pressed her back against the cold metal wall and tried to catch her breath. Her beautiful blue skin was covered in burns and cuts from the latest battle. The space station around her was completely destroyed, twisted metal and broken glass everywhere she looked. The smell of smoke and damaged electronics filled the air. 3 months ago, she had led 100 of the best Valerian pilots into human territory. Now only 12 ships were left, 12 ships out of 100. The numbers made her feel sick every time she thought about them. "Commander," her second-in-command, Captain Raven, crawled over to where she was hiding. His voice was barely a whisper. "We need to leave this place. Our ships are badly damaged, and we don't have enough fuel to make it home if we stay much longer." Lyra nodded, but she didn't move. Something was wrong with this whole situation. The human battle group they had fought earlier today had been protecting something, but it wasn't a military target. The ships they destroyed were transports, big, slow vessels that couldn't fight back. Why would humans risk so much to protect? "Transport ships? Did our scanners pick up any survivors from those human vessels?" she asked. Raven looked confused. "Why would we care about human survivors? Commander, we need to focus on getting our people home." But Lyra was already moving toward the station's main corridor. Something was calling to her. maybe curiosity, maybe instinct. She had been fighting humans for so long that she had started thinking of them as just enemies to destroy. But today, something felt different. The corridor was dark and filled with floating debris. Emergency lights flickered on and off, creating scary shadows on the walls. As they moved deeper into the station, Lyra could hear something that made her stop cold, crying, not the electronic sounds of damaged machines, but real crying. Someone was alive in here, and they were scared. "Commander, this is dangerous," Raven warned. "This place could collapse at any moment. We should leave now." Lyra held up her hand to silence him. The crying was coming from behind a damaged door marked with human symbols. She used her weapon to cut through the twisted metal, and what she saw inside changed everything. 30 humans were trapped in what looked like a medical bay. They were injured, scared, and clearly not soldiers. There were older people with gray hair, young adults, and even some children who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. They looked at her with pure terror in their eyes. "Please," one of the older humans said, his voice shaking, "don't hurt them. Take me if you want, but please don't hurt the children." Lyra stared at him. In all her years of fighting, she had never been this close to living humans. She had expected to feel hatred, anger, maybe satisfaction at seeing her enemies helpless. Instead, she felt something she didn't expect. These weren't monsters. They were just people, scared and hurt and trying to protect each other. "What are you doing here?" she asked in the human language she had learned for military purposes. A woman with kind eyes and gentle hands was taking care of the injured people. She looked up at Lyra and said, "We're medical staff. This transport was carrying supplies to refugee camps, people who lost their homes because of the war." Refugees? Lyra had never heard of human refugees before. The woman nodded. "Millions of humans have had to leave their homes because of the fighting. We were bringing medicine and food to help them." She gestured to the boxes scattered around the room. "That's all we were carrying. No weapons, no military supplies, just medicine for sick people." Lyra felt like someone had hit her in the chest. All these years, she had been told that humans were aggressive invaders who wanted to destroy everything. But these people were trying to help other humans who were suffering because of the war, just like Valerian refugees were suffering on her home planets. "Commander," Raven whispered urgently behind her, "we cannot get involved with human prisoners. We have our orders." But Lyra wasn't listening to Raven anymore. She was looking at a small human child who was holding an injured woman's hand. The child was trying so hard to be brave, but tears were running down his face. He reminded her of young Valerians she had seen in refugee camps back home. "You," she said to the medical woman, "can you help injured Valerians too, or only humans?" The woman looked surprised by the question. "I'm a doctor. I help anyone who needs help. That's what doctors do." Something clicked in Lyra's mind. "My people are injured too. Some of them are dying. Would you really help them?" "Of course," the woman said without hesitation. "Show me where they are." For the next several hours, Lyra watched something amazing happen. The human doctor, who said his name was Dr. Chen, worked alongside Valerian medics to save lives. He didn't ask if someone was human or Valerian before helping them. He just saw injured people who needed care. Dr. Chen was calm and smart, asking good questions about Valerian biology and sharing human medical techniques that actually worked. When one of Lyra's pilots was dying from a wound that Valerian medicine couldn't fix, Dr. Chen used a human technique that saved the pilot's life. "Why are you helping us?" Lyra asked him during a quiet moment. "We're your enemies." Dr. Chen was cleaning his hands after finishing surgery on a Valerian officer. He looked tired but determined. "I became a doctor because I believe all life is precious. War doesn't change that for me. But we've been fighting your people for 15 years. And I've been trying to save people for 20 years, he replied. I've seen what this war does to both sides. Human children crying for parents who will never come home. Entire families destroyed, cities turned to rubble. It has to stop somehow. Lyra had never heard a human talk like this before. In all her military briefings, humans were described as cold, calculating, and ruthless. But Dr. Chen seemed genuinely sad about the war's impact on everyone, including Valerians. "Dr. Chen," she said carefully, "what if I told you I could take you somewhere where you could help end this war? Would you come with me?" He looked at her with curiosity rather than fear. "Where would we go?" "To meet my father, the Valerian king. Maybe if he could see what I'm seeing right now, that humans and Valerians can work together, maybe we could find a way to stop all this fighting." Captain Raven overheard and immediately protested. "Commander, you cannot bring a human to our home planet. It's against every military regulation we have." But Lyra was already making up her mind. "Raven, look around you. Our regulations haven't saved us from losing this war. Our regulations haven't saved our dying planet. Maybe it's time to try something different." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Finally, he said, "If there's even a small chance that my going with you could help save lives on both sides, then I'll do it." As they prepared to leave the destroyed station, Lyra realized that everything she thought she knew about this war had changed in just one day. The humans weren't all monsters, and the Valerians weren't all heroes. They were all just people trying to survive and protect the ones they loved. Maybe, just maybe, that understanding could be the beginning of something better than war. The royal guards at the outer defense stations couldn't believe what they were seeing on their screens. A single Valerian ship was approaching their dying planet, but it looked like it had been through a nightmare. The once beautiful vessel was covered in makeshift patches, some clearly made from human technology. Burn marks covered its hull, and one wing was held together with what looked like emergency repair cables. But that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part was the message they received as the ship requested permission to land. "This is Commander Lyra, requesting immediate audience with King Zephyros. I'm bringing a guest who might be able to help save our world." A guest? What kind of guest would a military commander bring home from a war zone? In the royal palace, King Zephyros was having another difficult meeting with his advisors when the news reached him. His daughter was alive. After 6 months of silence, not knowing if she was dead or captured, she was finally coming home. His hands shook as he activated the communication system. When Lyra's face appeared on the screen, he nearly cried. She looked older, more tired than when she left. There were scars on her face that hadn't been there before. But she was alive, and that was all that mattered to him. "My daughter," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank the stars you're safe." But Lyra's expression was serious, not happy like he expected. "Father, I need to speak with you immediately, and I need you to promise me something before I land." "Anything," Zephyros said without hesitation. "Promise me you'll listen to what I have to say before making any decisions. Promise me you'll give my guest a chance to speak." The king frowned. "What guest?" "Lyra, who is with you?" The camera angle shifted, and Zephyros felt his breath catch in his throat. Standing next to his daughter was a human. Not in chains, not looking afraid, but standing as equals with her. The human was wearing clothes that looked like a mix of Valerian and human styles, and he was looking directly into the camera with calm, intelligent eyes. The royal council chamber exploded in angry voices. "A human!" someone shouted. "She's brought a human spy to our world!" "This is treason!" another council member yelled. "How dare she bring our enemy here?" But Zephyros held up his hand for silence. Something in his daughter's eyes told him this was more important than anyone realized. "Lyra, explain this to me." "Father, this is Dr. Chen. He's a human medical officer who saved the lives of 12 of my pilots. More importantly, he thinks he might know how to fix our energy crisis." The room went completely quiet. every advisor, every guard, every person present stared at the screen in shock. A human thought he could solve the problem that had stumped the best Valerian scientists for years. Dr. Chen stepped forward and did something no one expected. He bowed deeply in the traditional Valerian way of showing respect to royalty. "Your Majesty," he said in perfectly spoken Valerian language, "I know this is unusual. I know my people, and your people have been enemies for many years. But if there's any chance that my knowledge can help save lives, then I had to try." Zephyros stared at this human who spoke his language and knew their customs. "You would help the people you've been fighting against?" "I'm a doctor, Your Majesty. I took an oath to preserve life, regardless of who that life belongs to. During the journey here, Commander Lyra showed me data about your energy crisis. I believe the solution lies in combining human biotechnology with your crystal systems." An older advisor named General Koreth, who had been Lyra's mentor years ago, stood up angrily. "This is madness. We cannot trust human lies. They're probably planning to sabotage our remaining systems." But Dr. Chen remained calm. "I understand your suspicion, General. If our situations were reversed, I would feel the same way. But consider this. If I wanted to harm your people, why would I come here openly? Why would I offer to help instead of hiding and striking in secret?" The logic was hard to argue with, but many council members were still angry. "Because this is a trick," someone shouted. "Humans are clever. This is how they plan to destroy us from the inside." King Zephyros watched his daughter's face during all this arguing. Lyra looked tired but determined. She had risked everything to bring this human here, and she wouldn't have done that without a very good reason. "Dr. Chen," the king said, "you claim you can help us. But why should we believe you understand our technology when our own scientists have failed?" Dr. Chen nodded respectfully. "Your Majesty, human technology is very different from yours, but that difference might be exactly what you need. Your crystals are dying because they've been working the same way for thousands of years. They need new energy to recharge, but they can't create it themselves anymore." He gestured to a small device he was holding. "Human biotechnology works by partnering with living systems instead of replacing them. If we could create a bridge between human biological processes and your crystal networks, we might be able to give your crystals the new energy they need to heal themselves." The room was silent, as everyone tried to understand what he meant. Finally, the king's chief scientist, Dr. Valoria, spoke up. "That's actually not impossible. We never considered biological integration because Valerians don't use biotechnology, but theoretically, it could work," Dr. Chen finished, "but only if we work together. Only if our species combine our knowledge instead of fighting each other." General Koreth slammed his hand on the table. "This is exactly what they want. They want us to depend on them so they can control us later." But Lyra finally spoke up, her voice strong and clear. "General, with respect, you're wrong. I've seen Dr. Chen work. I've seen him save Valerian lives when he could have let them die. I've seen him cry when we told him about our dying cities. This isn't a trick. This is a chance." She turned to face her father directly. "Father, our world is dying. Our people are leaving. Our energy is almost gone. We can keep fighting this war until we're all dead, or we can try something that might save everyone. What do we really have to lose?" The king looked around the room at his advisors. Some looked angry, some looked scared, some looked confused, but a few looked hopeful. His chief scientist was already making notes, probably thinking about how human biotechnology might work with their crystals. "Dr. Chen," he said slowly, "if we agree to work together, what guarantee do we have that your people won't use this knowledge against us later?" Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said, "Your Majesty, I can't speak for all humans, but I can speak for myself. I'm willing to stay here on your world for as long as it takes to solve this problem. I'm willing to share everything I know, even if it means I can never go home, because some things are more important than going home." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. This wasn't someone trying to trick them. This was someone genuinely trying to help, even at great personal cost. King Zephyros felt something stirring in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, actual hope that maybe his people had a future after all. "Very well," he said finally. "Dr. Chen, you may land. We will give you a chance to prove your theories. But know this, many of my people will not trust you easily." Dr. Chen smiled, and it was a kind, tired smile. "I understand, Your Majesty. Trust has to be earned. I'm ready to work for it." 3 weeks had passed since Dr. Chen arrived on Valeria Prime, and the work was proving much harder than anyone expected. The human doctor spent 18 hours a day in the crystal laboratories, working alongside Valerian scientists who were still suspicious of his every move. Some days brought small victories, moments when the biotechnology seemed to connect with the ancient crystals. Other days brought complete failures that left everyone frustrated and exhausted. King Zephyros visited the laboratory every evening, watching as his people and this strange human ally tried to save their dying world. The sight still amazed him. Dr. Chen would explain something in simple terms, drawing diagrams that combined human biological concepts with Valerian energy theory. The Valerian scientists would argue, test, modify, and slowly begin to understand. But not everyone was happy. About this cooperation, General Korath had been growing angrier every day. As Lyra's former mentor and the leader of the royal military, he commanded respect from many Valerians who still believed humans were their enemies. He had served the crown faithfully for over 200 years, and he couldn't accept that their salvation might come from the very species they had been fighting. "Your Majesty," Korath said during a private meeting with the king, "this is madness. We're giving our most sensitive technology secrets to a human. What happens when he returns to his people with everything he's learned?" Zephyros sighed. He had heard these concerns many times. "General, Dr. Chen has made no attempt to hide his work or keep secrets. Everything he learns, he shares immediately with our scientists." "That's exactly my point." Korath slammed his fist on the table. "He's gathering intelligence on our most advanced systems. This is the perfect spy mission disguised as help." The king understood Korath's worries, but he had watched Dr. Chen work. The human doctor was genuinely trying to help, often working, until he collapsed from exhaustion. "General, our crystals are dying. If we don't find a solution soon, there won't be any secrets left to protect." But Korath wasn't convinced. That night, he called a secret meeting with other military leaders and conservative nobles. "The king has been fooled," he told them. "This human has manipulated Princess Lyra, and now he's manipulating our ruler. We must act before it's too late." The group that gathered was impressive: generals, admirals, and noble families who controlled significant resources. They all shared the same fear, that trusting humans would lead to their civilization's destruction. "What do you propose we do?" asked Admiral Cade, the commander of their remaining space fleet. "We save our king from his own kindness," Korath replied. "We remove the human threat and return to proper Valerian solutions to Valerian problems." 3 days later, Korath's plan went into action. It started with sabotage in the crystal laboratory. Someone contaminated one of Dr. Chen's biotechnology samples, causing a small explosion that damaged weeks of research. Then, false reports began spreading through the city that the human was actually making their energy crisis worse. Dr. Chen was confused and hurt by the sudden hostility. Valerian workers who had been friendly started avoiding him. Guards followed him everywhere, watching his every move with suspicion. Someone even threw rocks at him when he walked through the city streets. "I don't understand," he told Lyra during one of their evening meetings. "The research was going well. We were making real progress. Why has everyone turned against me so suddenly?" Lyra knew something was wrong, but she couldn't prove it. "Dr. Chen, there are people here who would rather see our world die than accept help from a human. I'm sorry you're experiencing this. The situation got worse when Korath publicly accused Dr. Chen of being a spy. Standing before the royal council, the general presented what he claimed was evidence of the humans' treachery. This device, Korath said, holding up a small communication unit, was found hidden in the humans' quarters. It's designed to send signals to human ships outside our solar system. Dr. Chen looked shocked. That's not mine. I've never seen that device before in my life. But the damage was done. Even some of the scientists who had been working with Dr. Chen began to doubt him. King Zephyros felt his heart sink as he watched, the hope drain from his daughter's face. "Father," Lyra said privately after the meeting, "this is a setup. General Korath planted that device. Dr. Chen would never betray us." "How can you be so certain?" the king asked, though he wanted to believe her. "Because I've watched him, Father. I've seen him cry when our people suffer. I've seen him work until he collapses, trying to save our world. That's not the behavior of a spy." But Korath wasn't finished. The next day, he invoked an ancient Valerian law that allowed military leaders to challenge civilian authority during times of extreme crisis. "I challenge the king's judgment," he announced before the full royal court. "I claim the right of combat to determine our world's future." This was serious. According to ancient tradition, Korath could fight a champion chosen by the king. If Korath won, he would have the authority to make decisions about Dr. Chen's fate and the direction of their civilization. King Zephyros felt trapped. He was too old to fight Korath himself, and most of his other champions were away fighting the war. But then Lyra stepped forward. "I accept the challenge on behalf of my father," she declared. The court gasped. A fight between Lyra and her former mentor would be more than just combat. It would be a battle between the old ways and the new, between fear and hope. Korath looked sad, but determined. "Lyra, you were like a daughter to me. I taught you everything you know about fighting. Don't make me hurt you. And you taught me that sometimes we have to fight for what we believe in," Lyra replied. "I believe in Dr. Chen. I believe in the possibility of peace between our peoples." The combat was scheduled for the next day in the ancient crystal amphitheater. Word spread quickly through the city, and thousands gathered to watch. This wasn't just a fight. It was a decision about their entire future. Dr. Chen was horrified when he learned about the challenge. "This is my fault," he told Lyra. "I should leave. I should never have come here." But Lyra was determined. "Dr. Chen, you came here to save lives. I won't let fear and hatred win. Tomorrow I fight for both of our peoples." The night before the combat, King Zephyros couldn't sleep. He sat on his balcony, looking out at his dying city and wondering if he had made the right choice. Had he been foolish to trust a human? Was Korath right that hope was dangerous when survival was at stake? As the first sun began to rise, he realized that tomorrow's fight would determine more than just Dr. Chen's fate. It would determine whether the Valerian people chose to face their future with courage or cling to the hatred that was slowly destroying them all. The Crystal Amphitheater had never seen a more important battle. The Crystal Amphitheater was packed with thousands of Valerians who had come to witness what might be the most important battle in their history. The ancient fighting ground had been carved from living crystal centuries ago, and its walls still glowed with faint light even as the rest of their world grew darker. General Korath stood at one end of the arena, wearing traditional combat armor that had been passed down through his family for generations. At the other end, Princess Lyra wore simpler gear, but her eyes burned with determination. Between them sat King Zephyros on a portable throne, while Dr. Chen stood nearby under heavy guard. The rules were simple and ancient. The first fighter to yield or become unable to continue would lose. The winner would have the right to determine Dr. Chen's fate and the future direction of their cooperation with humans. "This brings me no joy, my former student," Korath called. across the arena as they began to circle each other. But sometimes we must choose between what feels good and what keeps our people safe. Lyra activated her energy weapon, a blade of pure light that hummed with power. You taught me that a good leader protects their people from all threats, including the threat of their own fear. The fight began fast and brutal. Koreth was older but more experienced, and he had trained Lyra since she was a child. He knew every move she was likely to make, every technique she had mastered. His attacks came in precise combinations that forced her to give ground steadily. But Lyra had learned things during the war that Koreth had never taught her. She had learned to adapt, to think creatively, to fight when everything seemed hopeless. Most importantly, she was fighting for something bigger than victory. She was fighting for the possibility of a future where Valerians and humans could work together. Dr. Chen watched in agony as the two Valerians he had come to respect fought each other because of him. Every time Koreth landed a blow, every time Lyra stumbled, he felt responsible. These people were risking everything to defend his right to help them. The crowd was split. Some cheered for Koreth, believing he was protecting their traditional ways. Others supported Lyra, hoping she represented a new path forward. But everyone understood that this fight was about more than just two warriors. It was about who they wanted to be as a people. As the battle continued, both fighters began to show signs of exhaustion. Koreth's experience kept him ahead, but Lyra's desperation was keeping her alive. Then, in a moment that changed everything, Koreth managed to disarm her. Her energy blade went flying across the arena floor. "Yield, Lyra," Koreth said, pointing his weapon at her. "You fought well, but this ends now." Instead of surrendering, Lyra looked directly at Dr. Chen. The human doctor saw something in her eyes, not defeat, but a request. She was asking him to trust her one more time. Dr. Chen had been standing quietly under guard, but now he made a choice that shocked everyone. He broke away from his guards and ran into the arena. A discarded Valerian weapon lay near the arena wall, and he could have grabbed it. He could have attacked Koreth from behind and saved Lyra. Instead, he ran directly between the two fighters and threw himself to his knees. "Stop!" he shouted. "Please, both of you, stop this madness!" Koreth was so surprised that he hesitated. "Human, get out of the way! This doesn't concern you!" "It concerns me more than anything else in my life," Dr. Chen replied, looking up at the general. "General Koreth, you're absolutely right to not trust me. You don't know me. You don't know if I'm telling the truth about wanting to help. All you know is that I'm a member of a species that has been your enemy for 15 years. The arena fell completely silent. Even King Zephyros leaned forward to hear what Dr. Chen would say next. "But here's what I know," Dr. Chen continued. "I know that Princess Lyra is willing to die to give your people a chance at survival. I know that your king is wise enough to consider any option that might save his world. And I know that you, General Koreth, love your people enough to fight, someone you care about to protect them." Dr. Chen stood up slowly, making no threatening moves. "You want to know if you can trust me? Then listen to this. I could have taken that weapon and attacked you while your back was turned. Instead, I'm standing here, defenseless, asking you to make a choice based on who you want to be, not who you're afraid I might be." Koreth stared at him, his weapon still raised. "What choice?" "The choice to let fear control your future or to let hope guide it. The choice to keep fighting a war that's destroying both our peoples or to try building something better together." The general's hands began to shake slightly. Dr. Chen continued, his voice gentle but firm. "General, I've seen what this war has done to human families. Children growing up without parents. Entire planets turned into battlefields. People on both sides living in fear every single day. Is that really the future you want for your people?" Koreth lowered his weapon slightly. "But how do I know you won't betray us once you have our technology?" Dr. Chen smiled sadly. You don't. Just like I don't know if your people will honor any agreement we make. Trust is always a risk, General. But the alternative to taking that risk is letting hatred destroy everything we both love. The silence in the arena stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, Koreth looked around at the thousands of faces watching him, his people, waiting to see what kind of future he would choose for them. Slowly, he deactivated his weapon and knelt beside Dr. Chen. I yield, he said quietly. Not to you, human, and not to Lyra. I yield to the possibility that maybe there's a better way forward than the path I've been walking. The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and confused murmurs. King Zephyros stood from his throne, hardly believing what he had just witnessed. 2 years later, the view from the royal palace balcony was completely transformed. The crystal towers of the city gleamed with new light. Not the pure Valyrian crystal light of the past, but a warm, organic glow that came from the biocrystal hybrid systems that Dr. Chen and Valyrian scientists had developed together. Ships moved regularly between Valeria Prime and Earth, carrying not weapons but scientists, artists, and families who wanted to learn about each other's cultures. The war had ended with the signing of the Unity Accords, an agreement that established the first joint human Valyrian government in history. King Zephyros was no longer a king in the traditional sense. He had become an elected representative, working alongside human leaders to guide both civilizations toward a shared future. The transition hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Dr. Chen had married Princess Lyra in a ceremony that was broadcast to both species, becoming a symbol of everything they could accomplish together. Their children would grow up speaking both languages, understanding both cultures, and seeing the universe as a place where different peoples could work together instead of fighting. General Koreth had become one of the strongest supporters of the human-Valyrian alliance. He often said that the day he yielded in the Crystal Amphitheater was the day he truly learned what it meant to be brave. Do you ever regret giving up the crown? Lyra asked her father, as they stood together watching the sunset paint the sky, in colors that both species had learned to call beautiful. Zephyros smiled, watching human and Valyrian children playing together in the gardens below. Power built on fear and tradition is just an illusion, my daughter. But what we built together, this is real. This will last. The light that now powered their world was stronger than the old crystal light had ever been, because it was built on something more powerful than technology. It was built on the understanding that sometimes the greatest enemies can become the most important allies when people have the courage to choose hope over fear.